Perfect. Good evening, the homeschoolers tribe of India, I should say across India. We've got members from Brazil, and that's very surprising. We have a very special guest today, and hopefully we'll look forward to hear him. Over to you, Shazia ma'am.
So, hello and good evening, everyone. So, here we are again with a new session, new topic, specially curated for homeschoolers. It's so good to see you all every Sunday at 7:30, and I appreciate your effort in taking out time on Sunday evening and attending this session. I must mention that I love the energy in the homeschoolers group where every parent try to share the information and help each other. Please keep it up. Now there is a good news. From now on, we will invite every Sunday a homeschooler to share their journey with us. If anybody is interested, please DM me or ping me, and you can find my number on the group. Help us to grow this community and join hands together to help each other. Now, I thank and welcome Hari sir for taking out his precious time to share the gems with us, which he has collected over the period of years by researching and thinking for over 2 decades in the domain of developmental psychology and cognitive science. And now, he and his wife are using this strategy for homeschooling their own daughter, who is 6 years old. So,
I have to correct it. She's 11 years old.
she's 11?
Yeah,
Okay.
11 years old.
Okay. Who is
Girls grow up
right
very
now?
fast.
Okay. Right now,
It's okay.
she's
It's okay.
11-year-old. So we would love to know those strategies from you. So everybody, please join hands together in welcoming Hari sir. Sir, the floor is yours.
Okay. Thank you very much, everybody. Good evening, and it's a great pleasure to be part of this meeting, and especially the homeschoolers group, and also to other friends who have joined and who are also not part of any particular group or who are interested in pedagogy, education, or anyone who is absolutely interested in children development, learning. So I welcome you all and thank you very much for inviting Dawood. Dawood, thank you for inviting me and to give a talk on this platform, and it's very encouraging and it's very. I'm excited and delighted to share my journey uh, with the fellow learners and schoolers, homeschoolers, everyone. So first to clarify one of the, I mean, to begin, before I begin, I just want to clarify this is not actually a kind of prescriptive kind of talk. That is, this is not a prescription for anybody. It's basically a wholesome experience through which I've drawn certain generalizations which I wish to share, which of course can be useful, which cannot be, and that is how each one accommodates or uses up into their or integrates into their own learning process or in the development of their children or their education and whatsoever. So okay, so this talk will be divided in kind of three parts. uh, to briefly, I just give the first part. I will be briefly talking about cognitive sciences in general, what it entails. Second part, I'll talk about my own journey, and the third, which finally comes to the point where some strategies or what has been learned over the years, which I kind of assimilated and started applying uh, those strategies to homeschool our daughter. And this, of course, the homeschooling agenda for us actually started very serendipitously because it was not planned. It was completely, although I was very engrossed or thinking about this research, and but this never occurred. But this pandemic actually it changed the way where where I found that I could apply these strategies, and we took a decision that we could homeschool our daughter, since at that time her school did not have any online schooling. So we started that journey, and this is the third year of her homeschooling, and we are making steady progress and with a lot of experimentation. Okay. So since the topic has been, or the poster which has gone to people, where obviously they will be curious what cognitive sciences are, and to the initiated, or to the people who already know about cognitive sciences, uh, they would obviously they would be aware of it. But to people who are not initiated, or they're not aware about the cognitive sciences, I'll just briefly tell. Cognitive sciences is nothing but it's about purely how our brains or the minds learn. It's all about the memory formation. It's about how we regulate our thinking, how we solve our problems. So essentially, cognitive sciences evolved from from the times when people started to think about machine intelligence. So when when people started thinking about how we can make the machines or the computers more intelligent, they started obviously the best way to reflect is the own human intelligence, the first place to look into it. So they started, like, wanting to imitate what exactly human intelligence is. And then if they kind of they found that if they could figure out, and maybe that strategies, or what happens as an intelligent human being, or whatever, what happens in that brain, if we can replicate in a machine. So that's where it started. So so scientists started, obviously it started becoming like a inward, looking into our own minds. So that's how these field emerged, cognitive sciences. And this cognitive sciences, actually, it became such a vast and deep field. So it's like, when scientists all over the world, when they started thinking about cognition, when they started digging the well, it went deeper and deeper. And still, it has no end. This cognitive science is such a vast field, and that too, especially when you deal with something like human mind. It's such a complex organism, mechanism, and especially when you're looking at the intelligence of the human mind and the deeper aspects of mind, it's too complex. So this field has evolved immensely over the last 20-25 years, and there is a lot of research going on. And now that the new branches of cognitive sciences have emerged, like cognitive neurosciences, and going more deeper into the aspects of brain, and trying to figure out, there are thousands of research papers output, which keeps coming in scientific journals, to conferences where people present different aspects, the dynamism and the multidimensional aspects of our human mind. So that is what is broad cognitive sciences study. But cognitive sciences is basically very, I mean, if you look at the frame, uh, kind of boundary, it sticks to more about creative problem solving, to normal problem solving, to the intelligence aspect of it, how we think, and and how memories are formed, how those connections are made, and those kind of things. It actually keeps away the emotion aspect of it. Emotion is another uh, big aspect of our human lives, and that is itself is part of the psychological process which has been going on for ages, since you know people have been thinking about human emotions, how it affects uh, the people, the mind, and all those kinds of. That is itself is again broad subject matter, which is not generally touched much upon in the cognitive science aspect, because it's generally focused on the intelligence and the thinking and the those kind of aspects. So I am my talk will also focus on the cognitive aspect only. It's not going to touch on the emotional nature of the child, or the what happens, the role of emotions in the homeschooling scenario, and the role of emotions, what happens in the child. I'm not going to dwell much in that, and that's quite deep and too complex. So I will my framework is going to be in the cognitive arena, where you look at the child as a complex, evolving, thinking person. So that is what my agenda is going to be. So how did this all happen? So I'll go back to my own journey, actually. So I finished my graduation from Mumbai University, and dabbling around with a lot of different kind of career possibilities, which I mean, the conventional career possibilities which offered me. So those kind of things, it did not appeal me. Some things which I dabbled in, it did not succeed. I lost interest, mm, quite, I mean, quite easily. And but there was, of course, there was this inherent curiosity to find things about order. But there was, I mean, actually there was no guidance for me in the sense how to go about it or approach about. I mean, if you want to really explore your curiosity and explore your horizons. But what interestingly happened was I could attend some interesting workshop. I was lucky enough to attend some interesting workshops, and in one of I happened to go visit a leadership camp at Devlali. So, in that workshop, on a second day, a very interesting episode happened. I mean, a criminal lawyer, who happened to come and give a talk, and that was a kind of excitement. So we were all geared up to hear about law and its dynamics at that time. But what shifted was he didn't talk about law at all. Actually, he talked about ecology. So that blew my mind actually, and the talk was so amazing. I mean, it's like entirely opened my mental frontier. Like, wow, what is this? This criminal lawyer is talking about, and he talked so much in depth. His personal, I mean, apart from his criminal law practice, he was too deeply interested in the ecological aspect of our lives and how it affects us. And it was quite deep, and it was so profound that it changed my whole perspective. So when after the workshop, when I came back, I got some references from him for some books and periodicals, all those, and this which I started exploring and all that. But also at that time I started developing deeply interest in obviously the psychological process of mind, normal psychology, and could explore bits and bits of the books which are available in our local bookstores or the paper mart, where I could go and find some books on psychology, read about, just getting informed about it. And that kind of became kind of a very kind of compulsive hobby, or passion, to go and to the bookstore and find out about things about, especially on the psychological aspects. And it started opening the doors, and then slowly what happened was it started. I mean, I was very lucky enough to experience a metamorphosis, or a complete changeover of my, and a deep kind of a kind of awakening, and a very deep experience of change. And I experienced myself a different kind of, like, uh, mental change, where I somehow intuitively found that there is some calling for me, some intuitive calling which is there. And I just kept at it and started exploring books, periodicals, whatever. Then it occurred to me, I need to, then I should look at the references of the psychological books, and then further probe on it, and then it started a journey. So at that time around, in artificial intelligence and all those subject matter was gaining ground. I mean, there were a lot of magazine articles and all which were being published on AI and much stuff. And when AI was when they were talking about AI, they were also talking about cognitive sciences. I mean, that was the emergence, and there were many scientists, people who were just thinking about human mind, how it is, the the beauty of our cognition, that how memories are formed, the role of uh, how representations happen in the human mind, and then how languages occur, like how we learn to speak a language, how there is a knowledge acquisition, and then what about then how problem solving occurs. So there were various scientists and various uh, institutions doing research on especially problem solving, like looking at chess matches, looking at chess players, and asking them to think aloud why they came up with this kind of problem or a move, or so. There was immense, there was literature started emerging, and I was getting more and more, kind of sucked into that. It was like, you know whole thing opened up for me. So that became kind of a passion, and day in day out, like, there was a hunger, and there was a kind of, also I started feeling a sense of direction orienting me towards, lucky enough to have support from family, friends who kind of never judged me or anything. I mean, throughout this period, some of the friends who are now part of this, who have come to attend also, so they never judged me, and they kind of kind of like, I mean, empathetically understood what my journey, and even though it looked crazy at those times, I kept moving on. And and it simultaneously also, as the literature I was observing and thinking about it, I was also looking, I've started that observation of real people in their way of life, or a daily basis, or how the problems are solved. So I used to uh, talk to people, ask them questions, try to understand how the mental mechanism, what kind of works, so how it works, what were they thinking. So I started more developing deep interest in the psychology of thinking itself, thinking and problem solving itself. So that got me. And then subsequently, after getting into deep into the psychological or the cognitive aspects of things, my interest now shifted to understand not only the complexity of the human mind and the psychological process, but what exists in the other complex systems around us. Then I started that framework of complexity, that you look at these aspects in such a wider and a comprehensive aspect. That complexity exists in other domains too, like sociology, social sciences, or say, for example, the economic system, to the other social systems, and the political system, the technology. So that was all mind-boggling. So that's entirely opened up a whole new frontier for me to explore, and that resulted in some um, mm, giving some talks, and also it generated another kind of artistic output. I don't know if it should be called artistic, but it resulted in kind of drawing, sketching, and those kind of dynamics. Now that is for an entirely new entirely another session to talk about. So I just want to come back here to talk on the insights of this cognitive sciences. Okay. So that is the journey in brief, what I underwent. So that is like I spent like decades in studying this, numerous research papers, just studying about things and psychological aspects, talking to people. And of course, there are many researchers who are far off, but you can access them through their papers, you can access them through their thinking and all that. So in all, what it shows, this cognitive whatever assimilation it shows, is our human mind is, of course, it's complex, but it also, cognitive sciences, what it shows is there are these different facets of our human cognition. I mean, it's amazing if you see, the things which we take for granted on a daily basis of our living or existence, our thinking when we go to work or we think about a problem and all, which is like we are taking for granted. But if you look at more subtly and deeply, it's quite profound actually. There are so minute aspects of our lives which we kind of go unnoticed, like how the knowledge gets represented, how we wake up, and you have this agenda of things today for us, that I need to finish this task, I need to complete it. Suppose there is a higher order thinking needs to be done, for example, looking at how do I strategize, or about a product, for example, a businessman who's looking at, so how is going to represent the problem, so what are the dynamics which are going into thinking about how he's going to solve the problem. Or for example, a scientist is solving a problem. So all this dynamic, if you see in our constant, we are dealing, and that is fascinating in itself. Actually, if you kind of go dwell deeper and look at it in a more subtle way, it's quite profound. So, and then subsequently, if you look at, then obviously look at a child, for example, how it acquires a language. I mean, from such an infant which it just keeps babbling something, and then the coherence it arises, how it happens. So these are very uh, it throws up all these facets of our cognition, and that is the beauty and the aesthetic aspect of it, which I experienced during this process. And also during this process, I myself I was lucky enough to keep my whole uh, curiosity throughout the journey, that questioning, keeping questioning, and then finding things. What happens, what is this, what is, I mean, and was lucky enough to find and explore, go about exploring the aspect, and also keep evolving in the process, where I could shape my thinking, I could refine my thinking, I could what I can say is uh, clarify the ideas, I could reorganize my ideas. So that is the kind of experience which I had. So that itself for us was a for me was a kind of a great creative experience. The whole creative process of assimilating and taking in all this information, and uh, organizing it and seeing through it, and what are the possibilities, and a new way of seeing emerge. So that was a great creative process which I experienced, I still experience throughout the journey. And this I mean, it was all going on, and I was carrying on with the work which was the then in 2012 our daughter was born. And then, I mean, as she was growing up, and we were looking at her, and there were certain ideas about development, and generally, you have thoughts for your child, right? It should develop or certain way, and that, and all those, generally the parenting uh, kind of basically, you as a parent start thinking about your child, and how it should be, or what how best we can contribute to its development, and what are the all those kind of things started emerging. And well, we took a decision of putting in a normal school near our area where we live in, and we didn't want to put in any flashy or any other kind of school, but let her mingle with the local people, local population, and those kind of thoughts which we had. And this my creative process which was already in the background, but there was no conscious attempt in terms of putting in much effort in. But these are basic things, we and my wife, we kind of agreed, and we sent her to a normal school and all. And there we saw that there was natural development, there was a linguistic uh, skills which she was acquiring, and little bit of mathematical skills she had acquired. Her teachers were all good, and the language especially. At by first or second, she was already dabbling in Kannada, Hindi, and English. Of course, English was natural for her, but other languages also she picked up, Kannada and Hindi also. So this was all like normal things were going on. But then now pandemic struck, and their school was a normal school. They did not have any uh, online kind of course or anything. So naturally, the onus, now we were like, now since so let's take up the onus on us to kind of let's school her. And before that, we had this idea about, I mean, we knew some people who were homeschooling their kids, uh, from my wife's colleagues. I mean, they were homeschooling their kids, and that was nice to know, but never any put any kind of conscious effort there. But this happened, and then the onus started. We started taking the onus of teaching. So taking on the basic material, she just completed her second standard, and then moving on to the third standard. So I bought some third standard curriculum books, and we started off with basic, that English and reading, and those kind of things. So, basically the basic mathematical skill, making a foundation, making her do certain things. And uh, daily kind of. But one thing was very clear, and that we need to keep up a routine, like daily we will do this, that we set for ourselves. So that, keeping that in mind, we started that. That was the first, the initial beginnings of our homeschooling. So the daily day in routine, it continued for 6 months. But in that process, actually, I started observing my daughter itself. I started observing, actually, children. Started that triggered, kind of. We started observing children. I also started observing my daughter more closely now, because earlier it was like, she used to go to school, come back, and there was some times of meeting, then she would go to play, and that was the end. But now she was there with us, like 24 hours, like so it's entirely like, now the onus was like, you I started observing her. And then, slowly observing it, then I started tweaking the the subject matter. So started tweaking a little bit to see what exactly. Now I had ample. When I started observing her, I found that she is keeping up with the literacy tendencies, and she she is capable of reading. So I said I'll give her some more challenge to her to read, and let's see. And I can, of course, I can be with her, and I can be, and I can help her out. So I started giving her little complex text to read, kind of. So I found that yes, she was engaging in it. She started reading that, and then I said, okay, then I don't need to. Then, as I was observing and her development possibilities, and then looking at other children, I mean, around, who are playing, and then consciously started thinking about the psychology of children. What exactly? Then day in day out, I used to observe my daughter, what she used to do. So although we made this routine, there was enough free time we allowed her to pursue her own project, whatever she wants to do. There was no fixed, nothing we defined for her. She kept out. She took some material. She used to make things, uh, play with the neighborhood kids. They would come home, they would play, they will have some kind of very abstract play. And that was kind of, when I started observing that abstract play, that became another kind of profound. I started dwelling more. Oh, this is now becoming more interesting, actually, like looking at what children's, I mean, how they are doing and how they are enacting their play, and all that. That became a more engaging thing. Apart from my the research which was going on in the background, I started seeing my daughter and the children's play, uh, in a new, started looking at in a new light altogether. And then daily I kind of started giving her more and more complex text, and I found that that was catching up. And at the same time, she, looking at her play and her moods, and what she would like sometime to draw, and sometimes she would not just keep up. It started occurring to me. I started finding parallels to the process which I experienced as an adult, the my whole creative process. I started seeing more parallels, because that's how, uh, when my creativity, or the creative process kind of exploded within myself, and way my transformation happened for me, and how I approached the materials in my hand, and then what was the regulation which was going on in my mind. And then there were times where I was not reading anything. I was to just pause, I was to just hibernate, incubate those. I started seeing similar things is happening at this childhood level. And that made me think that this is so extraordinary, this period is so extraordinary. I mean, as children, they are thinkers, or evolving thinkers by themselves. It's so profound, it's so deep themselves, which we as adults, we are always trying to make up something with them, trying to do something with them, that they are to be engaged, they need to be done. But I could see that there is this natural, I mean, the nature itself, or the built-in mechanism, the cognition itself, so beautifully uh, uh, kind of organized. in children that they are capable of not only thinking deep. They are in fact capable of asking profound questions, and which many people of you would have experienced. You generally know the capability of children. And I found that the structure, I need not put any structure uh, to this person. We consciously decided we are not now going to put any structure to this evolving entity. So the curriculum was out of question. We did away all the with the although we maintained a routine. So my experimentation was, give a complex text to read day in day out. And since I had already an exposure of different domains where I've read and all, I started kind of make her read. That is the one aspect, and the other aspect is we left her to think in a very abstract way and to find her own kind of possibilities. And I found that that children, I mean, how they are exploring with their senses from all different possibilities, and they use different modalities. When I use the term modalities, there's a very a deep research. For 1 minute, I'm experiencing some sound.
Is it the background noises around? In
I
fact,
think it is.
okay, I'll also, Hari, just
Sorry.
asking everyone what I'm requesting all the participants. A couple of questions that have come also on the chat
Okay.
box, and so maybe, yeah, I'm like the journeys. Do we want to start and take up some questions now so that the people are very curious? A cognitive scientist background and homeschooling, it's a very lethal combination for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah, true, true. So, would I'll just
Wrap it
briefly,
up. Yes,
I'll
yes.
wrap
Done,
because
done.
I'm sorry, I was not conscious of the time because I got myself
No, no, we
involved
are
in
we are looking at a
so
10-year journey in 30 minutes. I understand. Go ahead, Buzz. Go ahead, Hari.
okay,
So
I'll
we'll
just
probably,
blab
yeah,
it.
yeah, wrap it up.
So, I what I found, I mean, questions would be interesting, so that would be a better way to also answer. Uh, so, looking at, I mean, the development of a child in a very entirely new way of basically seeing the development of a child, and I will then, of course, with the questions I can share with the strategies, what we used, and how it is shaping up. So, I think we can go ahead with the questions right now because I don't want to now take up much of the time, and since the time is also limited. Yeah, Dawood, you there?
Is there any questions?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Now there are no questions, I think so.
There are some questions in the chat box though,
Okay,
and
I couldn't see it.
not in this chat box. In personal windows, I've got a couple of questions.
Okay.
But
Okay.
even then, I'd compiled a list. I thought this was interesting to hear. There you are, Kajal ma'am. Thank you so much. So, what's the most challenging aspect of homeschooling? That's a question from Kajal ma'am across. So, Hari, what would that be?
No, the challenging, there are a lot of challenges. It's not homeschooling. I mean, per se, it's actually it's defying all odds. Actually, I mean,
So true.
it's not easy as we think, because it's good for, it's definitely it's a great thing for a child to have, because what I found is the child needs autonomy to grow and to evolve as a thinking and a problem solving person. And when they are curious, and those kind of curiosity, uh, when they get that questions, and somebody there to ability to answer them, and also allowing them to figure out the questions or the answers themselves, those things are great benefit for the child, and which is needed if you are like, if the child has to evolve
So
and
true.
to solve problems, and to think about things in depth. But
And it's an
then,
right. And it's
yes,
an ever-growing
yes,
journey, isn't it?
it's a ever growing journey, but there are challenges in terms of, like, how see, the circumstances are not constant. It's so fragile. And especially after the pandemic, I mean, it's everything has so become unpredictable. So the important thing is how we can have the constant environment for that, and that is very difficult. That is one of the biggest challenges which we could or any homeschooler can face actually. School, of course, has a structure, so you know the child is going to school, and whenever every year you know it's going to follow that pattern. But it is not available for any homeschooler. Like they are not going to school, right? I mean, they are all dependent on your environment and what you are going to give them, right? And if
I've seen.
anything changes on your
Good.
personal front, it can also affect their journeys. But in this, if we can make them capable enough to to handle and to be resilient and to find their own way, there is no stopping actually, and you can do it also. I mean, laying the great foundation would be the best step. Once you lay the foundation, I think the child is more or less on his own and it can figure out things. And then, with the support of the environment or the other support, what it can be given, it can definitely uh, it can it can find its way, and even parents can show their way.
All right. There's a question. I'm sorry, Vinay. I think
I
my
hope
background
whether
noise interrupted you. There is something very interesting you mentioned. So Vinay is right. You had some personal experiences you are about to share. So probably why don't you continue that, Hari? And I think that is what we're looking forward to. So yes, Vinay, thank you so much and apologies.
can you repeat that
So,
question? I mean,
you were going through the aspect of your personal experiences and observations. So that is
yes,
the
yes.
aspect we kind of
So
interrupted with.
the
So
experience, the creative process, actually,
go ahead.
it concerns with long-term thinking. I mean, it is not confined to some, creative thinking happens in a day, or it takes years where the creative thinking develops, and you need to have a kind of a longer view of things. And also, as a creative person or whatever, I mean, I'm lucky enough to experience that, to have a long-term view and have a path forward. So this the and another thing, the thinking happens over a period of time. So it's not that you are thinking about it today or tomorrow, but it happens over the period of years, months, years, decades. It's like that. So to crystallize what I'm saying now, or from my experience, or what I'm trying to apply for my kid, or even what I'm sharing, where it will help others. It is out of that long-term thinking over the years. So that long-term view has to be even applied with children's point of view actually. So children's development you cannot compress or compress it in fine kind of structured life, where we say, oh, he's not 12 years old, he should be in sixth standard, or the grades, or he has finished 10, by 16 he has finished in, by 18 he has finished whatever his higher secondary, by 21 he is out of college. No, that development you cannot have that lens for children, development process of the children. You have to take a more longer view, and you cannot categorize by grades, degrees, and the schooling formats, or the time defined by us or the entities around us. You cannot have that, because the children, during their whole lives, I mean, they experience a lot of they evolve, they experience a lot of things, they need time to assimilate things. They have immense potential to learn faster, but there is a paradox where you cannot push things too far. You cannot just push for things that the child can do. No, it cannot, that kind of. So it is a paradox where you have to kind of take a middle path, where you cannot load the child with like, if you look at the new research coming, you cannot cognitive load the child by stuffing in too much of syllabus, or activities which will compress their thought, and they will, in fact, the structure of the mind itself will change to something else. But you need to have a very loosely coupled system where they are able to evolve, think, but also assimilate and to the realities, and also be capable of of facing the realities of the outside world. So how do we do that? So, in one of the strategies which we are applying now for our daughter is, not focusing on any curriculum or any A, but focusing on literacy. So, the literacy is the one of the most important aspect for a child. I mean, to have. Okay. And it's not grade specific. It has nothing to do with the grade, or the which grade she is, or she or he is in. You have to, that is the fundamental duty or the responsibility for us as parents, is to make them literate in different, when I say literate meaning the literacy which is regular, which is happening in school, they might go and come, but we need to make them capable to reach higher level of literacy, where as they evolve and as they go to the higher standards, and where they are able to understand the syntax, the lexicon, and all the words what is going to attack them. Today I feel the current system, it doesn't enable that. By keeping this kind of a grade level or system where uh, when the as the child moves on to the higher standard, his ability to read is lost. He's not able to, first of all, nobody is there to guide him to understand the to make differentiation between how to pronounce a word, or what would be the meaning of the words. That is kind of lost, and that's why many children also falter as they grow up. I mean, they are suddenly overwhelmed, and with this so much of information and the text, they themselves are not been like trained or skilled. So that is one of the most important aspect which for. And the thing is, you don't need to feed anything to the child in terms of how this thing is there, science, geography, social science. You don't need to do that. You just make them literate, let them find their own way to address their own curiosity. If that curiosity is related to science, they will figure out themselves with the literacy which they are carrying. But you don't have to say, okay, now this is science, you are going to read science, this is going to be a social science, you're going to read history. Those things are mind boggling for the children. Now that is what I called as a cognitive load on the child. You don't need to. Once you are literate enough, you are capable of finding the information, assimilating, thinking about the issue itself. And going forward, how are you going to have these children to engage with the amount of output and the text which is, or the content which is being generated all over the world on a day to day basis? There is so much, but when there is no ability for any person, or no, there is no inclination for a person to read at all, how are they going to assimilate the text or the content and make decisions? So that is one of the most challenging things which one. And what is happening is, with this kind of compression of syllabus and a semester, and towards the end of, like, rushing through things, the children are not even learning a single thing deeply about it, which they are naturally inclined. But look at our own artificial structures and the barriers which we have put around them, which slowly, it's like kind of a concrete block which you are building around them. And finally, when the block is like kind of to a size where they just absolutely stop thinking about things, they're just mindlessly going through it. So this is one of the most biggest observation with my experience, and then with reflecting on our daughter evolution, we kept clearly out of that. And so my effort, or our effort, is more in building literacy, and simultaneously, of course, numerical literacy. Like, and these are all slow process. This, you cannot build it in a day or in a year. You say, okay, I send her to school, it become, no, you, there has to be a constant, consistent, daily effort for us to be with them, and till a certain stage where they are independently, where there is a skill enough where they can read themselves and they can assimilate, and they move forward. And one more big thing, which, sorry, I'm going beyond my stipulated time, is this sorry, I just lost this. Um, Sorry, I just slipped out of my mind what I had to share. Actually, that was a very big thing. That is that to retain things in memory. You don't need to feed anything to the child, or to tell it to memorize or anything. I mean, about the subject matter, anything. You just allow it to it help you. You just allow them or the child to help them to read, and the assimilation and the memory formation will automatically it's going to happen. And this the pressure on the memory, it's not going to anyway help. They are not going to solve problems with the whatever they are assimilated the knowledge. Our job, our work as parents or educators or leaders is to build a structure where that learning can happen. And now, what is all happening is we are all shutting down the learning process instead of paving or building a structure where children can think, solve, read, and solve problems. I feel that is one of the greatest. That is what a big thing which I have experienced. So this education or learning or homeschooling or any convent, it's all about laying the foundation, laying the structure where a child can grow and learn to read and mathematical whatever skills, and it can, and you have to build it to a level of skill. And that level of skill cannot be always, you can't keep assessing them daily on day to day basis. You have to just keep it perfect. It's like, for me 10 years nothing happened, I kept assimilating, nothing happened. I mean, I was sometimes, there was always an anxiety of where it is all going through. But at the 11th year there is some awakening where something comes up. Oh, there is, oh, this is the realization, this is what I have learned, this is my learning. So that same process, it happens to a child, it's going through, it wants to do that, it needs to experience that eureka moment. Oh, I understood this. And there are, in fact, a growing child has all those metaphors, analogies, all those imagery rich in themselves. But we are teaching them what is an analogy, what is a metaphor in grammar, which is kind of, makes them go backwards. I mean, shift their thinking backwards. You don't teach. Why do you need to teach grammar? Just tell them to teach them to read. That is enough. The grammar comes up later. You can then correct it. You can then help them form sentences. Okay, you can speak in this way or you can write in this way. So, I mean, there is what my experience is. There are a lot of unnecessary things which have been carried on in the name of learning, and also combined with, of course, there is anxiety of parents which they feel that their child might be left out, and those kind of issues dynamics are there, which I don't want to uh, ignore. But this is overall what I want to kind of share my my thoughts on that. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Hari. And I think it was wonderful. A very different look into the world of homeschooling, I must admit. And I hope everybody got the idea of what we're going ahead. How we, I'm sure there's so many questions coming up. We'll open up the floor for the next 10 minutes with regards to some Q&A. I've got a couple of them here. Hari,
Okay,
one
sure.
for sure. If somebody has to read the idea of cognitive science, what would that one book you'll recommend, or what is that one book currently on your desk?
There is this one book by a very well-known cognitive psychologist and a developmental psychologist both. He's, I mean, I always refer to him, and he has been a profound influence in my life and his writings, especially. His the name is Howard Gruber. He's no more there. He passed away some years ago. But he's one of the, I think, very humane developmental psychologist and a cognitive science professor whom I've read and revered so deeply. And his writings are what it kind of keeps my thinking and my confidence in the ideas of the whole psychological process and what we could do with children. It keeps going. So
I'll
his name is Howard Gruber. His writings are available. Some of them, the PDF is most of, but I can share. Which I anyway I have a PDF of his
please
writings.
do that. I think people will look forward to it once I put the
Look,
recording in.
but I should clarify that is actually it's not some introduction to cognitive sciences, but
So,
it
okay.
is actually in the domain of more of adult creative process, like what happens in the creative process. But when you read through it, it's a kind of a deep analogy, and it can reflect to your own thought process too. So it's not something, and it's written in also it's such a humane and beautiful language that anybody could understand. So definitely
Wonderful.
that could be definitely I can share about it.
Right.
And
Thank you
of
so
course, there
much.
are countless number of scientific people who have worked hard, and so much they have put effort in understanding the learning process of. I mean, the literature is immense actually. But of course, I have sampled from all from like thousands of which I maintain a database kind of list, which I would be eager to share what I have read through. So you can avail that. Definitely, you can avail that.
Absolutely. Mr. Vinay has raised a hand. So, Vinay,
Yeah,
why
yeah,
don't you go
sure.
ahead?
Yeah.
Namaskar, Arena. How are you?
Vinay sir, how are you? Good, good. Good to see you.
We've seen your own. Yeah, yeah. So now, when you said you don't take the emotional aspect into cognitive science,
Ha, ha,
so
ha.
I'm a bit skeptical about it because you see, when the children are challenged, that
Hmm.
means they are more emotional. They learn very well,
Hmm, hmm, hmm.
and when they are frustrated, they don't grasp the
Correct,
concept or something, right?
correct.
So I think cognitive science should go along with the emotions as well.
No,
It
no.
cannot be
See,
separate.
no. What I meant was actually we are just looking at for now. For now, of course, there is the role of emotion on cognition itself is another study, which is also there. I'm not denying you, and that's a good question. The role of emotion on the whole human cognition. But overall, right now, with the focus of the talk, we'll just keep away that emotional aspect of children the dynamics of emotion which affects the children and their growth processes. We'll just keep it away for now. That was my point of view to bring forth. That's why I clarified. I'm not saying that emotion doesn't affect. In fact, emotion also has a deep effect on the cognition, and that it affects in different ways too. And as you said, when children are challenged and they are deeply they get excited and they want to go ahead and solve. But at the same time, when they are like down periods, yeah, there are those moods which happen. But overall, I was focusing just the talk on the evolving thinking, problem solving kind of attitude of children.
All
All
right.
right.
Got it.
Good,
Understood.
good.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks a lot.
Right. Thank you, Vinay, for the question, and thank you, Hari. Well, quickly, a couple of questions. I'll
Yeah.
take two more. One, of course, is in the group itself. Mr. Mehraj has asked, how do we build a structure where learning can happen? I know the entire talk
Yes.
was around it, but if you
Yes.
could just quickly, in few minutes, explain that.
Yes, that is where I wanted to end with this is that how you build the structure, you build a structure by building a long term kind of a literacy program for kids, a long term where day in day out you make them read and expose them to diverse kind of text materials. That is one of the, and there is nothing, and another important aspect which I missed is that don't worry about children comprehension. I mean, many of the time we find that we are testing the comprehension of children, like have you understood this, have you understood, no need, no need. Children themselves are tuned to to strive and to understand the world around them, which they are using their natural senses to do it. What we need to give them is the tools with which they can see the world or to perceive or to receive the world. And that tool is what? When you make them read, when you give them that tool, you are making them capable enough to find and take a book out and read out themselves and try to understand themselves. That is the capability or the structure we need to build. And for example, during this whole building the structure, also we need to focus, like for example, on how we can build the mathematical or the numerical ability. I won't call it as a mathematical or in terms, because that becomes many children get it. We need to build even the numerical ability aspect of it, of the skill, and that can be built by day in day out, you know helping them thinking about solving problems of mathematics. And mathematics itself is useful in a way to think about the world. In fact, that could be a more engaging way also for children to grow and think and solve problems. In fact, in that sense, we are also making them, they are natural problem solvers, but you can make them capable of solving problems. And along with this building of literacy, definitely children will evolve and they will have a better structure, and uh, to face the challenges. Basically, what children face challenges I can see now is absorbing and absorbing the text and trying to make sense and the meaning of the text, and which they struggle. And not every kid is now going to open a dictionary and going to check for the meanings and references and all that. It's kind of, it has become a kind of drudgery. But if we don't, have a cognitive load like, syllabus or any, and give them a free hand to think about themselves, and let them think or assimilate the realities of life themselves, open the doors of cognition to the world, and help them build by building this literacy and the numerical foundation, the potential can be immense. Even for, I have to clarify, this is still, ours is also an experimental process which is going on, because this is, that's a third year, so we don't know what is going to happen in the next, how she is going to grow up, or yeah, maybe after 20 years down the line we
Right.
might have some kind of result. So
And
this
I
is still
think
a work in
I want to
progress.
share something in.
Yeah,
Sorry to interrupt you there.
no problem.
You might have heard of Do Nothing Parenting by Jinan Existential Foundation.
No, I've not heard about that.
I think he has been a 40 years of research. Is almost in align with cognitive sciences.
Okay.
So he's visiting Bangalore in the month of July, 10th,
Uh-huh.
11th, and 12th.
Okay.
So Jinanji has done he has observed the children's in tribes in the
Yeah,
tribal
correct.
area.
No, it's true. In fact, what you mentioned, in fact, earlier learning, if you see, there was no, like, formal schooling or anything. Children learn in small community groups. They are along with the parents, and they learn the basic skills, like, for example, hunting, fishing, and whatever, and they become skillful at it. But now, since now city, it's a different now. Now since our whole environment has changed, we are no more like,
Yeah. So
hunters or,
what I was
but
trying to say is that so I
yeah.
think you both should connect together.
That
The
would be
Jinanji
interesting.
and
Yeah.
you, because
Yes.
he has done a phenomenal research,
Okay.
almost 40 years of research, and he's been, helping the homeschoolers and unschooling parents to
Okay.
revamp and redesign their entire, idea of how
Approach.
the children learn. So it's
Correct.
almost in align with your research.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay, so I think
And
I wish to,
just
yeah.
adding Mr. Vinay, if you ever get connected with him, please add him to a community, and we'd love to have him as a guest. I
Yes.
mean,
Yes. Of
what
course.
better than hearing from the experts themselves? Okay. On
I
that
just
note, I think, yeah, yes. Thank you so much, sir. I mean, Vinay sir, I would love to hear you also. I think homeschooling is so beautiful. It's evolving. There's no customized one path for everything, and that is what makes the whole program so amazing. We're just trying to correct pan India, connect and make some small hubs. There's a little segment, Hari. We call it, the fun segment, to know you more as a person. I hope I don't make you uncomfortable. But 5 quick questions from different genres just compiled together. Let's see how many can you answer. You've got only 30 seconds to answer them, Hari.
Okay.
All right,
Sure.
so this is what we do. All right, first question: what color T-shirt that Mark Zuckerberg wore?
Mark,
Quickly,
blue.
blue. All right. I think my team members and participants can tell me right or wrong. Is it gray? I believe. Where do you
Okay.
find rhinos in India?
Assam, Kaziranga.
Lovely. That's one for sure point. Which team won the IPL this year? I'm sorry
Uh,
if you're not a cricket fan, but Bangalore.
Chennai
It's
Super
definitely
Kings.
not Bangalore. They've been trying for last.
Yeah. Chennai Super Kings.
Okay, good. You got all three, I think. What's the capital of Gujarat?
Ahmedabad.
Nice. India's national fruit, Hari.
India's national fruit. That's interesting. No idea. That one I'm not aware. About
Oh,
national
look.
flower, I know, but mango. Is it?
There you
Yes.
are. Yeah, the season is
Yes.
just ending.
Yes.
I think you got
Yes.
5 out of 5.
Got
Thank you
it.
so much, Hari. I think it was absolutely amazing. Good to know you. I've got now
Great.
more people asking questions, but it's so beautiful. It's so unstructured, and yet there's so much of learning. There's so much of structure. People think
Yes.
homeschooling you can do just get up and decide one day. What Hari taught us today is there is an entire process behind it. There's cognitive science behind it, and yes, we want to raise our kids to the best of our abilities. and
Correct.
and we are
Yeah.
homeschoolers. As homeschoolers, we always say we're not anti-schoolers. We just believe that there's a better processes, and that is what we love to give. So Hari, your final words, and we close on those notes.
Yeah. Great at having to present my views and share my thoughts. It's a really good honor. And thank you everyone and my friends who are there online. I can see them. Thank you very much for joining. And I wanted you guys to be there around, and you guys made it. so lovely. I mean, thank you so much, so much. Yeah, thank
From all of
thanks.
us here, thank
Yeah,
you. Yes, Hari.
and if anybody has any questions, of course they can. They have my number. They can. I mean, you can pass on the numbers if you, and or in the group I'll be able to answer if at all they have any questions.
Absolutely. Very gracious and generous of you, Hari. I think
What is the feedback? Okay, just a final remark. What has been your feedback? Or was it unstructured? It was not. How? What exactly you felt? I mean, can you conclude by that? I mean, by this presentation or whatever interaction?
uh,
Can
uh,
you kind of sum up?
honestly, okay, so I think I will also let participants share their views in the group. But honestly, Hari, I felt you gave a lot of impetus to the idea of homeschooling. For me, as a parent, raising my three girls here as a
Mm.
homeschooler, it gives you a lot of courage. That, as you said, there is a lot of reading, and as a parent, we are working overtime, perhaps reading and understanding. So, for me, hats off to you. You put in a lot of strength in the idea of homeschooling. So there you are. This is my honest and very genuine feedback, Adi.
Oh, good. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.
So everybody, thank you so much. Shazia
Thank
ma'am,
you so
over
much.
to you, and we can end the session.
Yeah.
So I'll share the recording, and everybody, once again, good night
Oh,
wherever you
good.
are. Bye bye. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you once again. Bye.
Thank you for the lovely session, Hari sir. And I'm sure that the homeschooler parents have definitely picked up a lot of things from you and they are going to implement in their lives.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you for coming. Thank you.
Bye bye,
Bye. Bye,
everybody.
everyone. Bye.